John chapter 7, that's where we were going to be in just a few moments. Over the weekend, we've been talking about the Bible stories that God has given us to share with other people and to learn from and to become closer to Him through reading and knowing and studying these particular Bible stories. It's very fascinating to me how God put those in there and how rich they really are in order for us to glean so many things from those particular stories. But we all know a good story has a lot of plot twists. You're watching the show and you think you know what's going to happen. You know who committed the murder. You know where this is going. And all of a sudden, there'll be a change. Something different will happen. And that keeps you on your toes. It keeps you paying attention. If you always knew what was going to happen next, you probably wouldn't pay attention as much. And we talked a little bit about the lazy brain and how we got to get rid of our lazy brain when we're looking to God's Word. But the Bible is filled with what we would refer to as plot twists. Things that nobody expected. If you were reading it for the very first time and you got to this particular point and this particular thing happened, you'd be like, this isn't what I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting this. Something different has happened, and now what's going to happen next? And that would keep you riveted to the message that God is delivering to us on a regular basis. But with God, you have plot twist. But you also have something that doesn't change. You have a consistent overtone in the entire story of the Bible that we're going to talk about here at the end. So I've labeled our lesson, the Twistless plot twists. So we're going to look at some plot twists that Jesus offers, but even in the middle of all those twists and turns that you keep you wondering what's happening next, there's some consistencies there that make us able to have the faith that we need to have and make it through all those different plot twists. So I just want to point out some of the plot twists in the Bible that Jesus is a part of. And we're not going to list all of them out here. We're just going to list a few out. Think about this for a second. Jesus has gone down to the census. His family has gone down for the census. And Jesus is going to be born there in Bethlehem. He is of the descendant of David. That's why he is in that particular town. So that town would have been filled with a lot of David's descendants. And if it had been figured out at that particular moment, the Christ is born, and the Jews knew that, they would have looked at all the people who gave birth and maybe called them all together and said, all right, could your baby be the Messiah? 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 And as I was thinking about this, I think it would be reminiscent of the story of David. Remember when Samuel went to anoint a king from the house of Jesse? And they had the dinner there, and all the brothers showed up except David. He's still out tending the sheep. So if they were in Bethlehem having that same kind of conversation, and Joseph and Mary showed up with Jesus, knowing who they were, knowing their history, they would have said, it's probably better if you don't come to this meeting. Just go away, because there's absolutely no way your son could be the Messiah. And yet it was their son, and not the son of maybe a person that would have had some kind of a political reputation, would have had some kind of influence, would have had some kind of power, would have had some kind of wealth. So right there you have a twist in the plot that everybody would have been, there's no way it could be him. Are you kidding me? It's really going to be him? Out of all the people there, it's going to be that little baby that ends up being the Messiah? The fact that he was living in Nazareth. Remember, there was a man, Nathanael, in whom there was no guile. And when he is approached about Jesus being the Messiah, what does he say? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Yeah, this is Jesus not living in Jerusalem, not being part of the establishment. That was a plot twist to them that they couldn't get their minds around and understand what God was doing through all of this. The fact that he lived in Galilee and he didn't live in Jerusalem. And he wasn't trained by the religious professionals at the time. In John chapter 4, or John chapter 7, where I ask you to turn your Bibles to, John chapter 7, starting in verse 45. This is where they have sent some men to arrest Jesus. And they go to arrest Jesus and they come back empty-handed. And if you can imagine that for a second, you know, if you send somebody to do something and they come back and there's no evidence that they did it, you'd want to call him on the carpet. Why? I sent you for this particular task. Then the officers came to the chief priests. I'm in John 7 and verse 45. And the Pharisees, who said to them, why have you not brought him? The officers answered, no one ever spoke like this man. Now that's also something that they wouldn't have expected. How in the world can that man with his background talk in a way that just amazes all of us? Verse 47. Then the Pharisees answered him, are you also deceived? Have any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? Let's just stop there for a second. As if now that is the standard. What we believe and how we think this story should go, that's the standard. Have any of us believed it? That should just automatically dismiss what you are saying at this particular time. Verse 49. But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. Nicodemus, he who came to Jesus by night, being one of them, said to them, does our law judge a man before he hears him and knows what he is doing? They answered and said to him, are you also from Galilee? Search and look, for no prophet has arisen out of Galilee. Look at the contrast here. They were judging Jesus that no prophet has come from Galilee. And because no prophet has come from Galilee, no prophet ever will come from Galilee, let alone the Messiah. But look how the officers, not the officers, the people that they sent to arrest Jesus, if you look back at the end of verse 46, they said, no man ever taught like this. They were judging Jesus based on who Jesus was and what he was doing and what he was teaching. And the rulers were judging him on something entirely different, what they thought he should be like. So this was a plot twist. Even the accusation at his death in Luke chapter 23 mentions that this man has stirred up the people starting in Galilee. Sort of like a dig. He started in Galilee. That's where he began all these problems. He's not from here. He's not from the hometown. He's not from the capital city. He is not that important. Now another twist was the people who knew who Jesus was and the people who didn't know who Jesus was. And this comes out very clearly in John chapter 9. In John chapter 9, Jesus has healed a blind man, a man who has no reputation in town. He's blind. They're asking who sinned that this man has been born blind. And Jesus says no one sinned that he was born blind. But let's look at this. They call him before the Pharisees, and this encounter always makes me smile a little bit. So just picture it. You have this guy who was just healed, not an important person at all in their minds, and you have all the important people there questioning him. John 9 and verse 24. So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, and now I see. And they said to him again, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Now just imagine that. Herb's already laughing. All right, he's there. He's there. He's looking at this, and this guy says, do you want to become one of his disciples too? And they get, well, look what it says. Then they reviled him and said, you are his disciples, but we are Moses' disciple. We know that God spoke to Moses. As far as this fellow, we do not know where he is from. Now, you could probably cut the tension with a knife at this particular moment, and you think this guy would be better served just to keep his mouth shut and walk out. Right? He's stirring up a hornet's nest here with these guys. Any other comment like that is going to get him in a lot of serious trouble. Verse 30, the man answered and said to him, why, this is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from, yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. And they had nothing. They answered and said to him, you were completely born in sin, and here you are lecturing us? And they kick him out. We don't want to have anything to do with you ever again. Get out of here. You're not welcome back again. Because they couldn't get their minds around the plot twist, if you will. That this is the way this is supposed to go. We have lazy brain, and we want the plot to continue to go the way we think the plot should go. And God says, no, 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 no. I'm going to make your lazy brain go away, and you're going to have to open your eyes and see something that you weren't expecting. But maybe you should have seen it all along. Even the nature of his kingdom was a plot twist. My kingdom's not of this earth. If my kingdom were of this earth, my servants would fight. So that was something that to the Jews was a major plot twist. So let's turn our attention now and look at the thing that can't be changed, the twistless part of this, that is consistent through time. And I think there's a couple things. One, God's love for us and God's faithfulness. So no matter how the plot twisted, if you would just keep your eyes on God's love for us and God's faithfulness for us, all those things won't shake us. Not only in the stories that we hear in the Bible, but even in the story of our own life. We noted this a little bit with Joseph. Joseph's up and downs. And we asked the question, is that what your life looks like? Do you have a lot of ups and downs in your life? And we all do. And we can handle all those ups and downs, all those plot twists, all those things we're not expecting, because of the thread that runs through all of those events, God's unending, unfailing love and his faithfulness to us. So I'm going to read some passages, and then we're going to read a little bit about the life of Jesus. So I'm going to read these real quick. Psalm 25 and verse 6. Remember your mercy, O Lord, and your steadfast love. For you have been from of old. Remember not the sins of my youth or my transgressions. According to your steadfast love, remember me, for the sake of your goodness, O Lord. Psalm 26 and verse 3. For your steadfast love is before my eyes, and I walk in your faithfulness. So no matter what happens, I keep my eyes focused on your steadfast love, and I walk in life because you are faithful. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens. Your faithfulness to the clouds. That was Psalm 36 and verse 5. Lamentations, there's a similar story, he's listing all these bad things that are happening to him in his life. And he comes down, he says, he has made my teeth grind on gravel, and it made me cower in ashes. My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. So I say my endurance has perished. So is my hope from the Lord. Man, bad things have been happening. I've been eating gravel. It talks about the Lord taking his arrows, and the Lord is shooting his arrows at me, and they're piercing my heart. I'm giving up. My endurance is gone. Chances are we've all been in situations like that where it's like, I just want to throw in the towel. I want to turn my back to all this. I just can't handle all this anymore. And what does he come down to in verse 21 of Lamentation 3? But this I call to mind, and therefore I do have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Amen. What we have the opportunity of doing every first day of the week is remembering that no matter what happens in life, all the twists, all the turns, God is faithful. And this represents his love. So I do want to, John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. John 15, Jesus says, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down his life for his sheep. I'm going to read a few verses to just keep our minds centered on Jesus as we continue to partake. It's going to be in John chapter 19, starting in verse 1. John chapter 19 and verse 1. Think about this in the steadfast love of the Lord and how he's faithful. So then Pilate took Jesus and beat him, and the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And they put on him a purple robe. And just think, this is probably the ultimate plot twist of everything. Jesus is going to die on a cross, accursed by God. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to him, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you that you may know that I find no fault in him." He is innocent. He is not guilty of what you're saying he is guilty of. Then Jesus came out. Visualize this. Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to him, "Behold the man." Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, talk about one of our senses here, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "You take him, and you crucify him, because I find absolutely no fault in him at all. He's innocent." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was even more afraid, and went into the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you and the power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You could have no power at all against me, unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate sought to release him. But the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let that man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and set them down in judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." And they cried out, away with him, kill him, crucify him." Pilate said to him, "Shall I crucify your king?" And maybe this is another plot twist here, because you don't expect this. The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to be crucified. Then they took Jesus and led him away. We might live a life with plot twists. We might live a life with ups and downs. We look back at our life and say, our life isn't quite what I expected. But this memorial reminds us each week of the twistless nature of God's unfailing love and his faithfulness. Let's think about that as we remember Jesus.